Hello, everyone. Today I wanted to discuss the geographical regions, both from a directional and geographical location perspective of Florida, and then also more from a cultural aspect of Florida, the different coasts and regions of Florida. So we'll start off first with geographical locations, like north, south, east, west. And first wanted to highlight this, and of course I say that, and my first one is not an actual geographical location name per se, but the first thing we're going to look at here is the Panhandle. So the Panhandle in Florida is going to stretch all the way from over here by Gulf Shores, Alabama, Mobile, Alabama. Over in this area here in the Panhandle is going to come all the way basically over here to the east of Tallahassee, or kind of ending there in Tallahassee is what I would consider the Panhandle. I don't think anyone's going to have any bones about that. I think I've spent time there and it's referred to there as the Panhandle. News people, sports teams, I think everybody is congruent on that being considered the Panhandle of Florida, and it just makes sense. So that's going to be the Panhandle. Of course, your big cities there are, of course, the state capital in Tallahassee, but then also, Panama City Beach and Destin over into Pensacola are going to be the main beach towns in that area. Also known as LA for Lower Alabama. Some people haven't heard that before, but I've heard that plenty. Also known as the Redneck Riviera. A lot of Southerners will come to this, particular part of Florida. It's in the central time zone, which helps folks from the South. And then also it's just an easy drive for people in the South. So a lot of times that's considered LA for Lower Alabama, or I've heard the Redneck Riviera as well. So that's a little bit obviously controversial, but whether true or not, it's at least a name that's out there for that region. So a lot of Southerners are vacationing down in here along the 30A. So that's the Panhandle. The second geographical location, like direction of Florida, in my opinion, is North Florida. That's going to be east of Tallahassee all the way over to the Atlantic, and then kind of including and kind of right up until Gainesville. I would consider Gainesville in North Florida. I would consider it kind of the end of North Florida. But this region here is definitely going to be North Florida. Now, of course, you can get a little bit more specific and you can say Jacksonville's like in Northeast Florida. That's fair, that's fine, but I would consider just this whole region North Florida. Again, this is more of a southern region. This is definitely the southernmost aspect or region of Florida. And yeah, so that's going to be the big influence there. And Jacksonville, of course, I spent a ton of time in Jacksonville. You go there and you will also see Northeast Florida kind of as part of the nomenclature there as well. And that's fair and that's fine. But yeah, so that's North Florida, kind of ending in Gainesville. The next is going to be what I would consider to be Central Florida, which is anywhere, south of Gainesville, kind of all the way down almost to, I would consider Lake Okeechobee, but inland. So yeah, from Gainesville down to Lake Okeechobee, obviously including Orlando. Orlando's the hub of Central Florida. I think everybody in that area would agree that they are in Central Florida. Now, of course, you can say, North Central Florida, up into here, and you could say, South Central Florida down into here, coming up on Lake Okeechobee. That's fine, but by and large, this area inland is going to all be considered Central Florida. You could also say, like all of the beaches down through here would be Central Florida. So you could say East Central, you could say West Central. That's all fair and that's fine. Just coming down this way, for me, South Florida, and there's a lot of people that think otherwise. Like, I am stone cold, die on a hill. South Florida is just 3 counties. South Florida is Miami-Dade County, or just Dade County, Broward County, and Palm Beach County. Once you hit, I think the next county up here is going to be Martin County, maybe. But at any rate, once you leave Palm Beach County, somewhere around here, I know Jupiter's still in Palm Beach, but I don't know. I don't think Stewart or Port St. Lucie is. Somewhere right in here where Palm Beach County ends, to me, that's the end of South Florida. And it's not Southeast Florida, it's South Florida. So like I would absolutely die on that hill of just South Florida is only those 3 counties and you will only call it South Florida. Southeast Florida is just not the right nomenclature for it. And then over in here, I don't consider like Everglades necessarily. No, in fact, I don't. I don't consider the Everglades a part of South Florida other than those 3 counties. The Keys, I don't, the Keys are the Keys. I would just consider them the Keys. And I guess maybe even the Everglades, I would kind of just call that the Everglades. I think that's fair. Over here, you're going to get into, over on the Gulf Coast, in my opinion, Southwest Florida. So Southwest Florida is anything from the south of Tampa Bay, so starting in Manatee County, major city being Bradenton. That begins Southwest Florida, and it extends all the way down to Marco Island. Obviously, there's not many people out in here, but this area here is definitely Southwest Florida. There's plenty of news stations out there and things like that, TV stations, newspapers, etc., that only really consider Southwest Florida starting in the Punta Gorda region and heading down to Marco Island. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. That's their prerogative. But I do consider points more north into Southwest Florida. I do consider, Manatee and Sarasota counties before you go into Charlotte County. I would also consider those as part of Southwest Florida as well. So those are a little bit questionable. A lot of people might not consider those to be Southwest Florida, but yeah, that's where I stand on that. And then you've got, the whole Tampa Bay region, Pinellas County, Hillsborough, Pasco, all of those. I mean, I would still kind of consider those West Central Florida is how I would kind of consider those. The main heading is going to be Central Florida, but then the subcategory is obviously going to be on the west. So West Central Florida is what I would consider the old Tampa region. And then really that you just get up into Big Bend region as well, which kind of just has more Central Florida, West Central Florida attached to it. So those are the regions that I would consider Florida to be. Now, if we look over at the coasts, and by the way, if you actually look at Florida does not, the actual official state of Florida does not consider or doesn't grant us any nomenclature for any of their regions. I actually did some research on their official website, and they just have geographical locations like this, these are easy to break up. This is the visitflorida.com. This, I guess, is kind of their main official state website for travel and tourism. And you can see kind of just how I had mentioned those is really aligned here as well. And for the record, they do have Southwest Florida starting from the south of Tampa all the way down to Naples. They call what I call South Florida, they call it Southeast, and to me that's just not a good name. The next thing is going to be, so that's geographical locations, that is north, south, east, west, but now let's move over to the coasts. The coast names here, and I found this online and I actually really agree with it, so I'm just going to use it. I think this is a really good representation and I have no problems with this. So since we started over in the Panhandle on the first version, we'll start over there again on this version. They call this area the Emerald Coast. This part of the coastline of the Panhandle Emerald Coast, because of the watercolor, it just has that kind of bright blue, aqua, teal, green, emerald color to it, and that's where they get that from. And I agree with that. Been there several times, and that tracks. Forgotten Coast, Apalachicola, St. Mark's, Port St. Joe, those places are in here. And a lot of people just say, well, there's just not a lot of development there is the reason why it's the forgotten coast. But apparently, I actually did a little bit of research on this, that there were some publications in the early 1900s that just didn't include this area of Florida, that didn't include the Panhandle. And the moniker kind of just stuck that this area was forgotten, and there is low development there. Even less development is in the Big Bend region, the Nature Coast, perfect name for that region. If you really want to see what old Florida looked like, although it's not necessarily beachy out here, very swampy, very marshy, very wetlandy, not a ton of beaches over in this area, but definitely if you want to see old world Florida, the Nature Coast and Big Bend is the way to go. The Sun Coast is going to be the Tampa Bay region. 100% agree with that. That area tabs itself as having over 300 days of sunlight per year. That's actually corroborated. I've done a little bit of research on some of the metrics and data behind that, and that pretty much is true. Although if you watch some of my old videos, I still maintain that Florida shouldn't be the sunshine state. It should be considered the partly cloudy state. And over here, there's, especially in the summer, spring, and fall, you're going to have clouds every single day out here. You very rarely have a full blue sun day, except for in the winter. So right now is about the time of year that they do see a lot of clear blue skies, and that's just because of the lack of precipitation and tropical elements handling out here in the Gulf, and just because it's drier. And then down from there, south is the Cultural Coast. You know, obviously I spent a ton of time in Sarasota. If you follow my channel, you know that. But you do see some naming and nomenclature in Sarasota and that area for Cultural Coast. Not much. You certainly see some cultural elements, you know, the arts, the music scene, just some of that stuff. You'll definitely see some of that in there. There's no doubt about that. I don't know. I think it's kind of a goofy name for it. Like, who really wants to live in an area called the Cultural Coast? But at any rate, most things over here are pretty homogenous. Let's be honest. But at any rate, moving down from there, the Lee Island coast. Of course, Lee County is there. I don't really know if that's where the name comes from. It probably is. There's a ton of islands out here, though. I think down in here in Marco, there's the land of 20,000 islands or whatever it is. So yeah, that's that. The Keys, not much coastline on the actual Keys. Well, there's plenty of coastline, but no real beaches on the Keys. And again, just like the directional elements of before, I would consider the Keys just the Keys. Gold Coast is kind of southern South Florida. So Miami-Dade and then Broward County. Most of Broward, they have Gold Coast, and Gold Coast meaning just like it's gold to live there, right? It's an awesome place. You know, just think about it like being the best or number one, or, you know, the gold award, whatever you want to call it, is where that's from, or where that name comes from. Treasure Coast comes from finding gold from, you know, treasures lost a long time ago with pirates and you know, just different ships and things that have lost their treasure over the years in this area. It's also where Palm Beach got its name from. Word has it that some explorers from wherever they came from bringing coconuts shipwrecked out here, and all the coconuts washed up on shore in Palm Beach, sprouted, and then they just got that moniker of Palm Beach there. So that's a Treasure Coast. Space Coast, probably the easiest one to remember and to identify, and I think the area code out here in this area is also 321, which I think is pretty cool. But obviously Space Coast, with NASA being out here, I don't know if SpaceX is out here too. I think it is. But yeah, all that stuff going on here in the Space Coast. And then UCF, which is over here in Orlando, they have a big space program, and that's kind of in that range as well. And then last is first. So the First Coast, up in Northeast Florida, Jacksonville, and obviously St. Augustine is where this all originates, being the first, well, I don't know if it's the first, but being the oldest, longest standing continuous city in the United States of America to this day. You know, they kind of put that on there as the First Coast, which makes sense. So Let me know, what y'all think about these. The first and foremost is the regions, geographically broken up by directions, and then this one with the different coasts. I just think it's fun to look at these things and kind of, see what they mean, see why they're there, where they come from, and then also do, and in particular, I'm thinking about businesses, but do businesses in these regions consider themselves, under these names? And what I mean by that is like a great example is like, a HVAC company. Up in Jacksonville, are there HVAC companies called First Coast, heating and cooling? And there are. I've seen them. I've been there. Are there businesses in, Bonita Springs that, say Lee Island, plumbing? I don't know. But I think those things are fun to think about. And yeah, let me know what y'all think. Let's have a discussion about that. And take care.